So the meaning of life, the most fundamental question in human history, and guess what? It's your lucky day because we're gonna figure it out right here on this dining table.
On this table right here.
This dining table. You know what? I specifically mentioned that it's a dining table because it just tickles me a little bit. It's a lot of fun.
It's not a discussion table. It's not a
podcast table. It's a dining table. Malaysian wood, by the way, just so we're clear.
Oh, nice.
I don't know the difference, but I remember them saying it was Malaysian. Just so we're clear.
Assalamu alaikum everybody, welcome back to the tribe. My name is Hilal.
My name is Zen.
And my name is Abdurrahman.
What are we discussing today, Sheikh?
The meaning of life. Just simple stuff.
Small.
Yeah.
It's quite the loaded topic.
Yes, sir. So of course we begin with the most important thing, and that is to mention the name of our Creator, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In the name of Allah. Our praise and our thanks belong to Him, and we ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger Muhammad, our role model and guide. So the meaning of life, the most fundamental question in human history, and guess what? It's your lucky day because we're gonna figure it out right here on this dining table.
On this table right here.
This dining table. You know what? I specifically mentioned that it's a dining table because it just tickles me a little bit. It's a lot of fun.
It's not a discussion table. It's not a
podcast table. It's a dining table. Malaysian wood, by the way, just so we're clear.
Oh, nice.
I don't know the difference, but I remember them saying it was Malaysian. Just so we're clear.
Mahogany is a little better.
Mahogany, perhaps. I think isn't mahogany like a color, like a type of wood?
Do you see how confused I look right now? Like I don't know where.
As far as you're concerned,
I thought we were gonna discover the meaning of life, and then we're talking about wood.
It starts so wood is a metaphor for the meaning of life. You plant a seed, a tiny little seed. Have you ever? By the way, have you guys ever planted anything?
Yeah, I've planted in my backyard.
Like what?
Tomatoes, mint, vegetables, all kinds of peppers.
What about you?
I planted seeds of doubt in the hearts of the.
I planted seeds
the opposite
of fear.
team. Let's just put it that way.
I planted seeds of fear. Seeds of fear in the enemy.
Oh, they grow into the entire. Yeah, let's leave this aside.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure out the metaphors and the analogies later.
So I have an idea. So when it comes to understanding the meaning of life, I was thinking maybe we could look at structuring it and understanding where we're coming from, why we're here, where we're going, and then perhaps maybe even discussing what our purpose is while we're on this earth, and then exploring the Islamic perspective. So what do you think about where we came from and where we're going in terms of that, and what's the Islamic perspective on it?
That's a good one. I definitely don't. I want to get back here. I was just want to make clear. I wasn't making the have you ever planted something? It wasn't like a random tangent. It's a very powerful experience that I didn't have my entire life until I finally planted something. Which similarly in our backyard, when I was living with my parents, we planted tomatoes. The first thing we had for years was mint because all Egyptians like to have mint in their backyard. The thing is, mint is a weed. Naturally speaking, it just grows. Once you've started it, it'll be there every year. Again, even after the winter, it comes right back. So. It might be plus minus depending on factors, but it's there. So it's the least work that you do, so you don't really feel that connection with it. However, when you've planted something like a fig tree, which is also another Arab favorite here in New York, even though it's a Mediterranean tree, and this is a freezing cold weather, like we're in the middle of winter now. Anyhow, it does happen to survive if you take care of it during the winter. So to see something grow from a seed, for God's sake, to a full-fledged plant that is 5 times your weight, and way bigger than you. Like in my parents' backyard, there's a fig tree now that's bigger than me. And I remember that thing when it was like a foot tall. And that's a powerful experience because that all started from this thing right here. And you had it in your hand at some point. So that's a powerful thing. One of my close friends from Mecca, I'm not going to mention his name, maybe he wants privacy, but if you're watching, hope you're doing well, inshallah. But he's from Guyana. And when he finished his studies, he went back to Guyana and he said that his family owns a mango tree farm, like a mango farm out there. And I said, well, that's interesting. I'm aware, I guess, that mangoes grow on trees. I learned it at that moment. But so how does that work? He said, from the moment you plant it, you got to plant the seed, that mango pit, that big old pit, you got to do some things to it, and then you actually plant it. He said, from that moment and you take care of it for the next X number of years, from that moment until you get your first mango that you can actually eat, that's not like too bitter or too like useless, it's like 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
So you dedication. You want a mango, you're gonna wait 8 years of work and like taking care of it, making sure it doesn't die and trimming the hedges and getting rid of the rotten fruits. And then 8 years later, you finally get your first mango. And then from there on out, if you take care of it, inshallah, it's every single year or whatever. Like you're now making money off of it. But it made me really think, now talking about the meaning of life, is that even though this doesn't answer the question, which we're going to get to in a second, your experience warps your perspective significantly. And our instant gratification, if me and you, if any of us three here wanted a mango right now, it's the middle of winter, it's a tropical fruit, we should not have access. We could set a timer on the phone, 5 minutes, you get to a key food or whatever and get a mango, right? It's not gonna be the best tasting, whatever the case, but it's a full-fledged mango that you can eat, right? And they flew it out from a tropical country. So that sort of instant gratification, that sort of having everything at your fingertips, that sort of never having to work more than a very short amount for what we want, I think has spoiled us to a point where we don't appreciate the meaning of life. We don't, the meanings that we find in the Qur'an, the meanings that we find in the deen are not as, they don't, لا يرسخون في الذهن, which is they don't like solidify in our souls as much as they should.
So I think what you're referring to is the alternative of living, the what we consider the Islamic meaning of life. What the alternative of that is what we are seeing today, the materialism, the instant gratification.
Yeah. And we are a product of that environment. We are also subject to it. I don't want to use the word victim. I think it is true, I guess, but it is, it's a self-victimization. Like we're benefiting so much and we're enjoying an easy life, and I'm using the word victim, so it could rub you the wrong way a little bit. Like it's kind of like very entitled.
Also, we'll put a trigger warning in the beginning.
Yeah, that's what we should do.
But I think the meaning of life, to draw a parallel from your seed example. It's the one of the main objectives, especially as Muslims, in terms of living in the finding meaning of life. Oh my God, I can't speak. One of the objectives for us, and whether we're human or we are all human, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, is i'mal al-ard, is developing the world that you're living in. Right? You talked about planting that seed and seeing it grow, the tomato, the fig, the basil, whatever. Just seeing that, developing a part of the earth, leaving your print and your imprint on the earth in a positive manner. Some people live in a negative manner. That's a whole different story.
Yes, sir.
But that's one of the that is one of the meanings and the objectives of life. Is that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala placed us here to build and develop this earth and make it better for the generations after us, and make it better for the people who are living on it now. So, do you want to maybe speak? There's so many examples that I can think of at least, for that sort of definition, if we want to even take it in that direction.
Well, that's an interesting, I don't know if that necessarily within Islamic framework. So going back now to the actual question, what is the meaning of life in Islam? And then let's explore comparing it to how others view life, right? I don't know that what you mentioned, i'mal al-ard, or if you want to use a modern term, being productive.
Right.
Be productive in dunya terms. I don't know if that would qualify as an answer for the meaning of life. It would definitely be one of your tasks.
Yes.
To achieve meaning,
yes.
Right? And we see that over and over today. I was watching this thing on YouTube. It was about the epidemic of useless jobs, and they were saying a lot of Elon Musk goes to Twitter for better or worse and trims off half the jobs, and it's still up and running. Now that might just be for now. It's up and running until it implodes on them. But it proved the point that in so much of if I were to ask you guys in the corporate world today, if you were to trim 10% of the jobs, would you be able to and everything would still be functional?
No.
Do you think so?
No.
Oh, you think so? No.
You trim 10% of the
the middle management and the guy who does this or that, the random nonsense.
It always comes back to whenever people do something like that, the cutbacks and stuff, it comes back to bite you.
I think there's a chance that it could still perhaps be functional, but there would be a lot more pressure on the fewer people that are left.
That are working. Okay.
Right? Because now everything is kind of evenly split. There's this constant consideration of work rights and whatnot, and then people get to take their break and their lunch break and then their half-hour break and their bathroom break. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I guess if you were to cut out 10%, it would still be functional, but there'd be a lot more pressure on the existing people. But what's your point behind that?
The point being is that we live in an era. Well, thank you actually, because I would have lost the point completely for sure. But the whole point being, the idea is that when you live in a world. And you're in a world where your sort of purpose, because your job, your occupation, your wadifa, shughl meaning what's occupying you, right? So what's occupying you from the morning you wake up, you get up early, you put in all that toil, and then you're sitting at a desk and you don't feel that you're actually serving purpose. It wears on you and it eats at your soul. And however, when you're doing a job that could be paying much less, it could be less prestigious in the world, but you feel it's in tune with your nature. you feel like I'm doing something. For example, like someone who works with his hands, a carpenter, this or that, or a person who teaches, for example, and like feels fulfilled, like I've done something in the world. I feel like I produced. I feel like I helped, even if they're getting paid less, or the modern world sees it as less prestigious. It nourishes the soul in a way that the feeling of not having a duty wouldn't. So that ties back into the productiveness, the meaning of life. Of part and parcel of the meaning of life is feeling a purpose.
So would you say, in terms of having a purpose, you ultimately find a purpose that satisfies you from providing others with value, or providing yourself with satisfaction from the task that you're doing every day?
I like that point. So that's where we differ, right? As Muslims,
Yeah.
we always have to tie it back to our source. Because in the modern world, they will say, well, as long as you're finding purpose, as long as you see value in what you're doing.
Yeah, in the West especially, most of the time it'll say, as long as you're happy, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The term happy is subjective. That's not a framework that anyone can apply and live by.
They can think they're applying it until it comes crashing down.
I said, because you're not your whole entire life. People live, and I think it's a lack of a goal. So people think that happiness is the ultimate goal. Happiness is an emotion that you feel for an instant, and it's supposed to make up for all the times that you feel pain, stress, anxiety, all these different emotions that we go through in life. Mm-hmm. When you make that the main objective, when you make happiness, which is again just an emotion, the main goal, too much happiness, the happiness starts to, it's like if your dopamine hormones are always kicking in, you're not satisfied anymore, right? Like that's the threshold. Like I can't really put it into words.
It's a goal.
It's supposed to be a threshold that you feel like at a certain point, and for an instant, right? That pleasure, that happiness. But if it
goes away again.
Yeah, if it's normal. It's like someone who does drugs, right? All of a sudden you kick the threshold up here, and then the next time you do a little more, so you kick the threshold up a little higher.
Always chasing it.
Yeah.
You'll never get there. You get there and then you feel it for a second. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone again. I have to go chase it again because wasn't that the goal of life, the purpose of life? Mm-hmm. You know what's interesting about that? There's a few factors, but the idea of, I'll give you just one, is that they did an experiment on rats. So they found like either, I don't know if it was drugs or like heroin or something, or the dopamine trigger in the rats, and they had them like, if they go into this section and they touch this button or whatever, they get the dopamine, and if they go into this one, they get their food and like surviving and whatnot. Yeah, and then eventually the rats realized it feels a lot better to get the dopamine, even though they were getting no nutrition and they're gonna die if they keep like. Obviously, if they were smart enough to get the balance, you get a little bit of drugs on the weekends, and no, it's not a good balance. My apology, take that part out.
Don't do drugs.
But they're rats, and I guess in this case the analogy is humans are no different in terms of the way we approach these things, because we don't have the ability to, like, if we have instant access to the dopamine that is typically produced after putting in the work, like the 8 years that it takes to get a mango. If we have it instantly, whenever we want, forever,
you wouldn't appreciate it as much.
You're never gonna appreciate the mango.
You never felt the pain and grief or the lack of the mango. You never felt.
Yes. So the value drops. But also, so what ended up happening to the rats is that they realized if we go to this switch, we get the dopamine, and that's the goal of it all at the end. So the rats would eventually develop the habit where they would just go here until they died. They left food and drink and everything because, like, well, this is what food and drink and everything leads to, and I can get it by a drop, a press of a button. So it just kept going until they died.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
So just tying it back to happiness and then kind of, I guess, reflecting it on being Muslim. So you say that constantly chasing happiness will never satisfy you because your tolerance will always be raised. You'll achieve your goal, you'll be happy for a moment, and then the tolerance will be raised. So the thought that I had when you were mentioning that, is that, so as Muslims, obviously, we're taught that nothing in this world will satisfy you except for Jannah and having Allah in your heart. Mm-hmm. So as Muslims and then living our lives, to full extent, how do you see yourself consistently chasing Allah and Jannah, even though you're never going to have it in your life, and staying motivated, even though we just said that ultimately happiness is not the goal or the purpose or the meaning of life?
Well, I think we want, but I want to just say one more, is that we do want to be happy eternally, and we are promised, and it's a very beautiful thing. We're promised.
Would you say that we can sacrifice happiness at the cost of something greater sometimes?
So what you're talking about is delayed gratification. Perhaps. So we still want the gratification.
That's definitely a good concept, yeah.
But we want to delay it. We understand that we need to delay it in order to achieve it permanently. in a way that's not fleeting, in a way that's not like drugs, in a, the bliss, eternal bliss of Jannah, inshallah, right?
This reminds me of something, and one of my teachers was the one who initially taught us. We started like one of his classes. He taught us this. It's that like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? And he put it very briefly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Dhariyat, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create human beings and the jinn except to worship me.
Right.
And then he says that one of the Salaf, Imam Mujahid rahimahullah, he comes and he looks at this verse and he says, لِيَعْبُدُونَ here actually means لِيَعْرِفُونَ, to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because how can you be sincere in your worship, and you're supposed to be worshiping Allah, sacrificing for Him, but how can you worship and sacrifice sincerely without first developing an understanding and developing a connection?
Absolutely.
So وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ actually means لِيَعْرِفُونَ, to get to know Him. So that means your objective, one of your objectives as a Muslim, is to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have that connection between you and Him, all of a sudden everything, no matter your everyday stress, your everyday anxiety, your everyday happiness, they're all compounded or lessened, depending obviously if it's pain. If you're happy, it's compounded. If you're sad, it's suppressed, just because you have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
It sort of tempers your
exactly, and that's why
emotions.
people who do have like a spiritual connection to even if it's not a complete correct understanding based on our Islamic understanding, they tend to have a more optimistic look on life, right? Because you're always trying to live your life through the perspective of finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and developing that connection with Him. But the point is that when you're developing a connection to Allah or to God, right? The idea is that when I am struck by calamity or an issue comes up,
you still maintain your gratitude.
You maintain your gratitude, you maintain your appreciation, or you find ways to solve that issue through that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So you run it through that framework.
Exactly. And
then
then
you perceive it as greater than this one incident.
Exactly. And then there's the same thing goes for the happiness, right? Like when you're, let's say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with a son or a daughter or whatever, there are certain things that you do that your religion tells you to do in that moment, and it compounds your happiness even more.
Oh,
so everything that you do is literally,
it makes the good times better.
Yes.
And it makes the tough times easier.
Yes.
Times of patience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even for the tough times, because I'm sure people always turn back to God, to Allah, whenever there's tough times. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ says in hadith, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ أَمْرُهُ كُلُّ خَيْرٍ, right? No, strange is the affair of the believer. Everything that strikes him or that is inflicted on him is khair, is good. So some people go through war, for example, and some people ask this question: if you guys have this spiritual connection to God, and this isn't a question for you, I guess, why does God allow babies to die in wars, and why does God allow for evil to take place in this world? Mm-hmm. If the objective in the world is to get closer to God and have that relationship with Him, look at what He's doing to you. How would you explain that? That's
a good question, actually, because I've had friends in real life that have had calamity strike them, and they're non-Muslim friends, even in front of me. They'd say, if you believe in your God so much, how could you let something like this how could you let something like this happen to you? And it's really, I've seen it in their eyes. You know what I mean? It's really a moment in which their iman is lowered right in front of me. You know what I mean? They may have the answer, they might not have the answer, but either way, just given the fact that it's a moment of weakness for them, you can see their iman lowering.
Yeah, because their emotions are so high. Let's say like when
it's clouding
clouding your judgment. Yeah.
When we saw the war in Ukraine developing, right? When it first happened, emotions were so high, like on TV, on social media, people in the street protesting. Emotions are so high. So if I sit there and try to explain to you in that moment, this is the objective, you have to look at it this way, it's not going to work. Your emotions are high. So you're
not in a position
to learn anything.
And if you're wise, or if you have a good framework, you're in a better position to recognize that. Like if you're part of
if you practiced it before.
Yes, if you practiced, exactly. So salah, meditation, or whatever version it is that you do, and obviously as Muslims, it's salah, it's connection to Allah, it's reflection, it's tafakkur, it's tadabbur, where you recognize that I'm limited. And I recognize that there are moments in my life where I'm more flawed than usual because I'm particularly angry that time, or I'm being taken advantage of, or I'm very sad, or my emotions run high and I realize emotion goes up, intelligence goes down, or ability to utilize my intelligence. So in that moment, if we're wise adults, and this will be useful for us, inshallah, that one day you're a father, one day you're a leader, one day you're a husband, this, that, right? So you say, okay, I recognize that I'm in a bad mood, or I recognize that something bad just happened, God forbid, I just got a ticket. So, I'm experiencing negative things in a heightened manner, right? So now I'm going to factor that in when I interact with my loved ones, because I'm going to make a mistake. Like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ saying, لا تغضب, لا تغضب, لا تغضب. Don't get angry, don't get angry, don't get angry. He's not saying, be a human being who can never get angry. That's
be
part
of
that's exactly, be a robot. That's part of your nature. He's saying, basically, be aware that when you get angry, you're going to act in a way. So avoid that. That's what I'm commanding you not to do. And if you see triggers and actions that lead you to get angry, avoid those. So, it's like if somebody tells you don't get drunk, Islam, don't get drunk, right? You're like, well, I'll drink the alcohol. And I was not told don't drink alcohol. I was told don't get drunk. It's like, come on. Don't do the things that will lead you to make that mistake, right?
I want to meet that bozo. Who said that to you?
Listen,
It's a disciplinary function, pretty much.
Yeah, it's basically it's a logical approach where similar to what you're saying is that a person in the situation you're talking about where difficulty arises, now they're not in a great position to make the most rational decisions. They might abandon their principles. It could work in the opposite direction as well, where they finally realize that they need God in that situation. So it could go in both directions.
I justify to this individual why Allah would put them in this time of hardship?
So actually, I was pulling it up earlier because this showed up yesterday. Dr. Shadi al-Masri, he wrote, the vast majority of atheist criticisms are based on the premise that God owes us a problem-free life. Let me repeat that so we can cut this first one out. So Dr. Shadi al-Masri wrote...
Look, guys, he's finally starting to like you.
Yes, a little bit. It's baby steps. Something that I had read earlier, Dr. Shadi al-Masri wrote that the vast majority of atheist criticisms are based on the premise that God owes us a problem-free life. So they're saying, that's our default. I'm starting from here. He owes me that. And then every time he doesn't give me that, gotcha. Well, where's your God now? It's like, wait a second. You're operating on the premise that you deserve. Nothing can go wrong. Or nothing should go wrong. Also, they're operating, when you say a baby died in war, that's obviously a tragedy. Muslims view it as a tragedy as well. That's a very difficult, imagine the parents going through that. Imagine, the society dealing with that on a larger scale. And the baby themselves, right? But obviously as Muslims, Allah has reassured us in a lot of ways. For example, that part specific example, a baby dying, is that Allah has reassured us that all babies go to heaven, inshallah, and then they'll be waiting for their family out there, inshallah, and there'll be a means for their family to get there. In fact, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ advised about certain children, if I'm not mistaken, children who die in miscarriage, or perhaps even older than that, they will be, effectively paraphrased, they will refuse to enter paradise until they take their parents.
Drag their parents into paradise.
Drag their parents.
This is any child who dies before
before birth.
Before birth. That they basically wait to drag their parents.
So the idea being is that not only have they been blessed to have eternal, because had that baby grown up and lived and dealt with life the same way we're dealing with now, and had to take tests and all this nonsense.
Had to deal with the atheists now.
Well, had to deal with the traffic and all that nonsense. They would be in the test. They would be in the dunya, and it would be either you go to Jannah or you go to hell, right? You got to put in the work. So Allah has spared them that. So we are reassured on that regard that this baby who perhaps in dunya we never knew because they died before birth, we are reassured Allah has given us a comfort and an ability, or giving us something that will aid us in being patient by saying, you're going to meet again, you're going to be reunited. You still got work to do. That baby's done and they're in paradise, right? So that aids us. And also the whole concept of, I don't believe that I'm guaranteed a problem-free life. Yeah. So why would God give you a calamity? You got a ticket, God forbid you got into an accident, you lost your arm. So it's like, Allah says in the Qur'an, وَلَا نَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, you will certainly be tested.
I was just about to mention.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
No, go for it.
Yeah. So the idea is that Allah says, no, it's the exact opposite of what the atheists are premising. No, Allah is saying, I guarantee you, get ready for it, and be sure you're going to be tested with some loss of life, some loss of limb, some loss of wealth.
وَالْجُوعِ, fear,
yes,
famine,
yes.
وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, and loss of wealth, loss of life, and
harvest. And your crops might not be good this year. So Allah says,
but then
no.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends it off.
Yes.
وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ.
Yes.
And give glad tidings to those who are patient.
Who deal with it with patience. These are all means of, and then in another ayah Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. it is only those who are patient, it is only those who persevere who will receive reward in the afterlife without hisab, without accountability.
Exactly.
So on this note, like when Allah says بِغَيْرِ hisab, it's not that much of a common phrase in the Qur'an, meaning everything we already know on the Day of Judgment, it's going to all be hisab. It's يوم الحساب, the day of accountability, the day of accounting. Like you're going to literally have your book of deeds and you're going to be held to account for what's in there. And things will be weighed and they'll carry a certain value. Your good deeds carry value, your bad deeds carry value, depending on a million factors. So when Allah says, no, as for those who are patient, there will be no hisab. I'm not even going to it's so great, it's so high that I won't put a number on it. You're just going to have to wait and see how high it is.
Yeah, can I build on?
I want to just, last thing, but keep your thought, don't lose it.
I'm trying.
So, one sheikh, he was talking about when Allah says بِغَيْرِ hisab, or when Allah says He rewards fasting, for example, without measure. And what's the highest number that we know that Allah says in the Quran that He's going to give you a reward? We know it starts off at what number?
One hasana.
One hasana counts. Yeah, it counts as. When you do one good deed, you get one hasana, one reward. But it counts as how many? 10. Okay. It starts at 10, right? Al-hasanatu bi'ashri amthaliha.
All right, yeah.
So our starting point is, but as for sins are just one sin. It's from Allah's mercy. So your hasanat, your reward are already 10 times as much as your sins for just one action. So, and then the Prophet Muhammad said, and it's mentioned in the Quran, إِلَى 700 ضَعْف. So, ضعف, sorry, not ضعف. They're going to call me out. So, إِلَى 700 ضعف.
Salafi Jama'ah,
they're going to get me. So, my Arabic teacher is going to choke me through this. So, the ضعف meaning weakness.
Arabic teacher going to get شكلك ضعيف.
There you go. So, I could call you out now.
No, my bad.
I can get you.
I was just helping you out, but if the teacher calls you, I called you out.
That's true. So, ضعف meaning weakness, and ضعف meaning multitudes, or sort of like, multifold, like how many folds. So, Allah says in the Quran, and like it's in the Sunnah, the Prophet Muhammad tells us that your hasanat begin at 10 times as much, and it goes all the way up to 700 times as much. And وَاللَّهُ يُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ, and Allah might increase it even further than that. So, but He doesn't give a number. So one scholar was saying, when Allah says, I will give you the reward without giving a number, and you know that the biggest number He gave was 700. Can you imagine that this number is 750, for example? Like if someone tells you, hey man, I'm going to give you $50, I'm going to give you $50, and I won't tell you how much I'm going to give you, that's how much it's going to be. Now if you end up giving him 75, he's going to be like, you made this big grand show and you gave him 75, you cheapo, right? That doesn't make sense. لا يليق بجلاله سبحانه وتعالى. Yeah, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Of course, like we don't compare it to Allah, but it's like when Allah says 10 up to 700, and I'm gonna stop there, and then you'll see what the rest is. It's not gonna be no 750 or no 1,000, right? It's gonna be, something
you can't imagine.
Insane, like beyond what we could comprehend.
Abdul Rahman was making a point about وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ, using that verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally telling you, we're going to test you. And then another verse, in the second verse of Surah Al-Ankabut. First time I heard it, the chapter of the Quran called the spider. It's like Alif Lam Mim. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Did the people really think that they're going to be left to say we believe without being afflicted, without being tested?
And prove that claim.
I was reflecting on that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say أحسب الذين آمنوا أن يقولوا or أحسب المسلمين. He says أحسب الناس. I was just reflecting on this. Did the people, every human who has a belief, think that they would say we believe, regardless of what your belief is? You think you're going to say I believe, if you believe you're a feminist, you believe you're an atheist, you believe in Islam, you believe in this, whatever it is that you fight your life for, whatever principle you have, you think you're going to make that claim, and you're going to be left to say, oh, I believe in that, but you're not going to. Those claims are not going to be tested and pushed to the limit.
Yeah. You get to reap the benefits of associating yourself with that grand claim, because nobody makes a claim that makes them look foolish. They say like, I am this. These are my principles. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, now you're going to be put to the test. Do you actually believe in honesty, even if it's against your own self? Do you actually believe in whatever it is that you believe in?
That's why even when someone asks that question, it's like, why does God do this? Why does God allow for evil to exist? It's like, look at the Quran. Literally, it asks you back. Did you really think you would live on this earth and say I believe in this, or I believe that it's morally wrong for people to die in war, and that for that not to be tested?
Even on that note, like the concept of, and I love this point you're making, because even a guy who's an atheist who believes that there's nothing out there, that's a belief too, right? That's a claim that they're making. So, put their belief to the test. And so when someone tells you and when you lead them, because very often what I found is that people who claim to be atheist or agnostic, they just, for the most part, haven't thought about it. And it's just a lot easier to not believe in anything and not to be held by any principles. Because same concept, like what you just mentioned, when you claim a principle, you're going to be held to it and you're going to be asked about it. So, and even in this dunya before the next world, so you're like, I don't want to deal with any of those rules and regulations, so I'll just do nothing. Or I just, in the meantime, I'll push it off, and in the meantime, I guess I'm atheist, right? So, but even that, like if you have a serious convo with them and you reach the conclusion that they say, okay, what's the purpose of life? And they go like, well, to do good. Now you can hold them to it the same way that they hold you to it as a Muslim or whatever, right? It's fair is fair. So okay, so do you do good as a rule of thumb? Do you sacrifice your time? Do you wake up and volunteer? Do you do this, that? If they tell you, which some do, they tell you that the purpose of life is back to what you said, to be happy. You'd be like, hey, great, I have a tool that will make you extremely happy until you die.
And no, it's not cocaine.
It's not. It's heroin. Actually,
Wow.
heroin gets you. No, but seriously, I'm gonna hold you to your claim. The purpose of life is to be happy. So why go through life the usual way and just be happy some of the time when you could be happy for the rest of your life until you die? And guess what? That's gonna be real soon because you overdose. You know, of course. I don't know where this is going. This is pretty bad. But jokes aside, all jokes aside, the same experiment with the rats is like a rat who cannot think that far ahead and is very simple in their thinking. They said all this work and fighting other rats for territory and getting the best looking rat girl and having rat babies, all of that is in pursuit of the dopamine. Here, this thing, we press this trigger, we just get dopamine right away until we die. They didn't know that it'll be very soon, and then they died. So there's like, my point is, here's a shortcut to like someone who tells you, hey, nothing happens after death, and it's just a sweet embrace. You just rest in peace forever in existence. It's like, hey, that's better than life. So you're welcome to leave. You know, nobody would do that, and that's another conversation to have. But like, it puts your actual claim that you believe there's nothing out there, or that you believe death is a release from all this, and it's an immediate one, and there's nothing out there anyway, blah, blah, blah. It puts that to test because you wouldn't actually act upon that. So a person like that has to also be self-aware that, hey, I don't actually believe this stuff. It's a smoke screen. I put it up there. It's a wall because I don't want to talk about afterlife. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about accountability. I don't want to be held to something. So I'll just put this up for now. And a lot of people stay there for a long time. And the longer they're able to ignore that and to not be self-aware, the longer they can stay in that lie.
The second point I wanted to make is that, this is actually in response to what you're saying now. When people say that stuff that Muhammad mentioned about, basically, I want the dopamine, I want the rush right now, the afterlife, basically, this part where you spoke about that next life, that life, even that is just going to be like an embrace. And first of all, regardless of whether that's right or wrong, I'm not going to get into it. But my point is that people who, when they ask those questions about why does God allow it for evil to exist? Why are there people who are born into wealth and people who are not born into all those questions? They have only a 50% vision of the entire picture, because their picture of what is right and wrong, or what is happening, the events that are happening in front of them are just the events of this life. But we know that as Muslims, in the next life, there's accountability. And that's what reminded me of that. The word hisab, there's hisab means I can't translate it.
Like accounting
reward.
Or sort of.
Hisab is not.
In this case, it doesn't mean accountability. It means like account, like
accountants.
Number, like
Is that a word?
Or I don't believe so. Perhaps, but not in this case. Not in this case. It would be without number.
You get what you deserve.
We're not going to count it.
Yeah.
You're going to get so much reward that it's effectively uncountable.
I'm referring to the linguistic word hisab.
Your fair judgment.
Your fair judgment. The result hisab. The result.
But in this usage,
I'm saying outside of this usage. I'm saying that the next world, this world,
accountability.
This world and whatever happens in it is 50%. It's 50% of the test.
Yeah.
The next world, the next life is the rest of the test. The other 50%. Mm-hmm. So the next world and the next life, what that looks like is that, hey, everything you did in this world, we bring it forward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it forward and looks at it, and He decides whether you deserve to go to heaven, you deserve to go to hellfire. And when people fail to understand that, or when non-theologians, people don't believe in any sort of theology, when they fail to see that other 50%, that hisab, that everything that you do, you're going to be held accountable for, there's going to be a reward and a punishment for, all of a sudden everything, your idea of justice, your idea of what's fair, because a lot of people say, oh, that's not fair. How's the meaning of life? How's your God fair? They say like, how's God fair? This is only 50%, my guy. Everything you're seeing here is just the events that happen, the tests that happen.
So you don't have the full picture, and you're making a judgment.
And you're making a judgment, which is you not fair. That's not fair from you.
It's not fair for your own self.
Exactly.
Well, like Allah says in the Qur'an, is that whoever wrongs himself has done it to his own self.
Exactly.
Like whoever does wrong has wronged his own self, right?
Exactly.
And it's similar. You know what you just said literally is there's an analogy that a sheikh shared where he said, let's say we went out and bought the most beautiful Turkish rug, Turkish carpet, whatever. I don't know. I'm assuming Turkish is like the good ones. So you
know a lot about
the Turkish,
carpentry, Malaysian,
the Malaysian wood, the Turkish rugs, Egyptian cotton.
You don't only get a sheikh in our podcast. Yes. You got a little.
I'm very good with the source of the interior design. So we got what else we got? What else can we add to the list?
Let's go back to it now.
The American tobacco.
Oh okay, man,
sorry. All right.
Well, we're stuck on this.
Okay.
You were talking about the analogy of the sheikh to
yes, the Turkish rug. So he said, let's say we went out and we spent like a few $1,000s and got the most beautiful, Turkish rug. We put it out here, and we can tell, like looking up, like it's worth it. It's a difference between this and that rug, right? And we know we can see it from our eye view. Let's say you go outside, grab an ant, just one ant, and you put it on this rug, and you put it right down the middle. What's the ant gonna see?
They think it's gonna whole world. They're gonna think it's a whole world.
It's a complete world for them. It's like, what is this nonsense? Why are these the Turkish rug has all these fibers coming out. There's red and green and gold embroidery and this most intricate, beautiful, amazing design. The ant is just walking. It has to climb up and go back down and climb back up and just go.
What are these hills here?
It's like hills. These nonsense. Why is this one red? If it can even perceive red, I don't know. Why is this one orange? Why is this one blue? And then the yellow goes, if there's a little decoration, it just sees yellow for a while, then it's red, then it's green. It's like, this is garbage. None of this makes any sense. Whoever made this is a fool. There's no design here. There's nothing. And it just keeps walking because all it could see is its own perspective. Meanwhile, we're watching this like this stupid ant over here. We can see the beautiful, intricate designs. We paid extra money for this. We know there's a reason why the fibers are a lot higher because it's very plush and very beautiful. Meanwhile, the ant can't tell the difference. All it can see is ant world, right? So it doesn't know why it's yellow for a while, then it's green for a while, then it's red for a while. It doesn't know why it has to go up then back down and the hills and the valleys. But all you need is to zoom out a little bit and see a bigger picture, and you get to see there's a design here, there's a value, there's a reason why it's like that, and it's a beautiful reason. And had it not been like that, it would have been cheaper and less valuable and less worth it.
So I have a question. So that's a very good point when it comes to perceiving the entire picture. But when it comes to people living in their everyday lives, obviously even the average human life ranges from 60 to 80 years, right? How is one meant to perceive it? So put yourself in the perspective of the ant, right?
Yeah.
Let's say the ant is trying to get from the beginning of the carpet to the end of it.
Yep.
In its day-to-day life, you know what I mean? The ant isn't always going to have the time or the patience or the effort to zoom out and see the bigger picture. So how is one meant to perceive life and using that same concept, go about life and remember what their true purpose is from day to day?
That's a great question. I mean, so on that note, we know that the ant can't zoom out. It needs an external help.
Exactly. So
we would have to lift it up, right?
It needs some sort of explanation that's going to satisfy it from its own limited perception in the moment. Mm-hmm. So what is that? So
I think what I like to do, and this is a fiqhi approach to things, and it's also just a rational approach to things, right? Is that it's also like an usuli. Anyway, Islam is very much in tune with the rational approach to things, right? So you start with your constants, you get rid of the things that we all agree on, and then where's our point of contention? Is the point we disagree with others is the variables, right? So what can we agree on? Because you're talking about put ourselves in the perspective of the ant, because the ant is us. We can only see, I can't see past this wall. It's only a few feet ahead of me. I can't see past tomorrow, past a minute from now, right? So I can only assume, and I can only extrapolate based on what I know. I think the sun will rise tomorrow, inshallah, again, right? Because all the data that I have tells me that it will. What else does my data tell me? What else does what we can all agree on, Muslim, non-Muslim, atheist, young, old, we can all agree on a few things. And let's try to number some of them now. We're not going to get them all. Number one is that we only here for a short amount of time, then we die. Agreed?
The only thing you're guaranteed in life is death, right?
Yes. Right. I mean, this is agreement.
Yes.
Right? So you don't need belief for this. This is going to happen. If you choose not to believe it, you're foolish. Right? But a child doesn't wake up knowing that. That has to be taught to them. That's muktasab, right? What's referred to as muktasab. Someone has to tell them, hey,
nurtured.
Exactly. Nature versus nurture, right? So someone has to tell them at some point, like, hey, explain to them the concept of death when they're old enough and they figure it out, or someone, your grandpa dies or whatever, they go, oh wow, I'm dying too. That becomes, do you think animals live now knowing that they'll die? Like a zebra?
Of course, that's why a zebra runs away from a lion.
It doesn't know death though, it doesn't know what death means, it just says, I don't want to
It doesn't conceptualize the actual...
I'm going to die, but it says, I don't want pain.
Yeah.
That's all it knows. It doesn't know that, oh man, I'm dying, tell my kids I love them. It just says, what the heck is this? What's going on? Until it dies. Right? So the difference between an animal, like a monkey, for example, or an ape that's very intelligent, they still, I don't know, maybe I could look it up. I don't believe they understand that I'm going to die. Like if they're dying.
Even if they have some idea, we can agree that they don't give it the same depth that humans give it.
No, they do.
I don't think they even know.
They do. No, that's why you want to see a zebra jumping off a cliff. It knows, I jump off the cliff, I die.
No.
It conceptualizes it, but it doesn't.
No, it just says, I jump off the cliff, and that's a bad idea because there's pain there, or there's fear there.
No, it's because I wouldn't make it. I would.
Do animals
Of course, they do. Animals do perceive that, but like they don't They don't abstractly understand the idea of of what that looks like. That's why they have survival instincts.
My opinion, because
Yes,
I've seen a lot of examples of this. I've seen, like, for example, this one video where a cheetah was chasing an antelope, a baby antelope, and then the mother got in the way and sacrificed herself for the sake of the baby. So
that's instinct.
So there's
That's instinct.
There's an understanding.
Yo, what are you talking about?
There's an understanding of an end. There's an understanding of an end in which we exist in the
I
same
don't
realm.
think so.
But I don't think it's to the depth that we have it. It's kind of just like, oh, I'm gonna be gone.
Why would it choose if it?
And they don't know anything other
Instinct.
than
If
this.
if it doesn't have that perception, why would it let the child? No, 1 second.
I'm listening.
Don't say no.
I'm ready to answer. I'm only listening to respond. That's all I'm doing. No, let's hear. I'll hear you.
What's it called?
I'm at peace.
Let's turn into a conversation about animal combat now. Bear versus lion.
Like animals,
Joe Rogan, we're coming for you, man.
animals can perceive that some animals can perceive that they lost a loved one or another, like elephants or whatever. They can grieve, but they don't know. Like a cat chilling over here right now doesn't be like, "Hey man, I'm gonna die soon." Or here's another more clear example: when a squirrel buries the acorns for the winter, does it know that I'm like? Does it know that one day I'm gonna come dig these back up? Or I don't know. Actually, that one.
Yes.
They do. I don't know that they do.
Yes, they do.
Leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think.
Yes. I don't think they do. They're all stupid. Animals are stupid. No offense.
I'm not,
Look, we only
Wow,
have
you just called the audience animals.
No, the animals are fine. The people are fine. The animals are stupid. Look, we only have to be nice to people and AI. Animals are not on that list because AI can defeat us one time, but animals I'm not too particularly worried.
Let's reset.
Wait, we still gotta get this out of the way. Where do we? Why are we at this
But
topic?
I'll tell you, that's something that's reset. So far we've asked the question, what is the meaning of life, and we've established that there's for us as Muslims, there's an element of you trying to establish connection with Allah. Now we're talking about the objectives.
Okay, so we're talking about the constants that Muslim, non-Muslim, all humans have to. So we said we all know that we're here for a limited time, then we die.
Exactly.
We all know that's agreed upon.
Right.
We all know that the dunya or the world that we live in, as far as again, constant Muslim and non-Muslim can agree on this. The world that we live in, we don't perceive it as fair. Agreed? There's some things that you see. Oh, hey, that's unfair. Why is that happening? Right?
Yeah.
And there's an imbalance. And I heard the guy who was actually agnostic, not Muslim or anything. In fact, he lived most of his life as an atheist. He was referring to it as this. He said, there's an imbalance. And he said, for the longest time, I lived as an atheist. And he's still agnostic. May Allah guide his heart to Islam. I think, inshallah, he's on the path. I hope he finds it. But he said, I'm agnostic now because in my studies, and he was like he's a acclaimed scientist. He said, in my studies, I came to the conclusion that this imbalance has to be rebalanced, just from a scientific perspective. And it made me really think, like, that's exactly what we believe. It's like, so, when you hold a rubber band and you pull it, what happens? Unless you're pulling it the entire time, at some point you gotta let go.
Every action has an equal and opposite
And it goes right back to, the balance has to be realigned. And so he's saying, I came to the scientific conclusion that the balance has to be, like, something has to rebalance everything once again. And he said, like, I don't necessarily believe in God just yet, but I believe there's a force out there, because why else would something being imbalanced matter? Like, if there's nothing out there, who cares? Let it stay imbalanced forever. What is forever even if there's nothing out there?
Definitely. I've seen a more mainstream example of this with Jordan Peterson. He said in his research with his colleagues, he found that, psychologically speaking, in his study of sociology with, just the group of people that he was studying, he found that when people talked about their experiences in life, where they started at one point and they ended up at another, it was always because they never got away with anything. you can never get away with anything. Every time you do something, it always has the equal opposite reaction. Whether it's a good thing, you get the reply that you deserve. Whether it's a bad thing, you get the karma or the consequence that you deserve. Yeah. And then even in Islam, right, I've heard this argument multiple times, for example, about people like arguing, okay, Hitler killed X amount of people and then he died. What kind of payback did he get before he died? And in Islam, we have this concept of in the afterlife, he will get his payback. However, Allah has that written.
But that's again, that goes back to the point about the 50%. You only saw 50%. You only saw Hitler kill 6 million people.
Exactly. You never
saw the other half. There's no way. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense that you live in a world where you're talking about, unfair. You see the injustice, the inequity, the constant death, threats, all these things that happen.
Some people die after having given more than they received. And many people die after having taken more than they've given. So now what?
And then they just get away with it.
Yeah. If you believe that nothing happens after death, they just cheated justice.
And some people, I've given the argument before to atheists, and they will be like, "Yeah, you just have to accept that. When you come to that acceptance, you reach ultimate peace." No, what are you talking about?
I just get more furious.
If then I get more furious, and I feel like I'm even more confused because I don't know what to live for.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Yeah, what's the point?
So speaking of, actually, I feel like up to this point, we've mainly been talking about theory and perhaps placing greater emphasis on the afterlife than this life. So it kind of, had this thought. It brings me to ask the question, what is one actually supposed to make of this life, given the amount of insignificance that is discussed, not only in general about the materialistic world, but even in Islam, but how we're taught, that akhirah is obviously more important than the dunya. So while we're here, and the time that we're here, what is some practical advice, or what are some things that we should actually do to make something out of this world and this life in general?
If I'm putting myself in the lens of just practical action, just so we could get out of the theory zone, doing good in this world, and that's as a means of serving God. So if we look at this world as a test, if we look at it as maybe it's a very crude example, but it's a bus ride to your home, your final destination, which is inshallah paradise, right?
Inshallah.
On the bus ride, you can get a little bit comfortable, you can pull out your phone, you can chill a little bit, but this is not home, and it never will be. And I'm only here for a short amount of time. My stop is coming. Let's say it's a bus ride, you don't know which stop you're taking, right? You're getting off. It could come off tomorrow, I could get off in 10 years. But I'm getting off this bus. So I'm not gonna obsess with making this bus as comfortable as possible, spend all my energy, my time, my effort, making my seat as comfortable as I can. But if I have the chance to help the old lady get in her seat, I will. If I have the chance to make it a little bit more comfortable while I'm here, within reason, sure. And whatever, but I never forget, that I'm on the bus and I'm gonna get off, and I actually want to dedicate my time to working on, if I can, in the moment, like for example, this example is getting out of hand here, but let's say I can work on making sure my home is up to date when I get there and invest in that home and so on and so forth. Obviously, that's a logical example. So what can I do as a Muslim? Well, first off is intention, right? There's a lot of people who do good, but now we get up to the theory again, because that's who defines good, and what are the parameters of good, right? And that's where you get into the concept of, God defines good. And if God defines good, then in order to know what good to do with my life, I need to know God.
I was actually about to ask about that, because a lot of, going back to the point we were making about atheists say you do good, but they really don't have any standard of identifying what good is. Good is a completely subjective term.
Yep.
And so in reality, although they don't believe in God, a lot of the time what you'll find is their understanding or their perception and the actions that they take to present goodness initially always roots back to God and something that is presented in religion.
I mean, the word good comes from God.
Absolutely.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah. Even linguistically. But you're right, yeah. There has to be a source. On a logical level, in order for us to agree that an action is good, at least on some base level, we need to source it to something. Otherwise,
there has to be some universal dictionary. Yeah. Otherwise, if it was completely left up to us, one person can say donation is good, another person can say murder is good.
Yeah, another person can say donation is stupid. It's foolish. Why would you give money out of your own pocket and give it to some random stranger who you'll never meet and can never benefit from? That's dumb. Right. You should give it to your kids. So what if your kids are rich? So give it to give it to people that you love and that you care for, that can benefit you. Because again, holding people to the claims that they make. I think some of the beliefs within the other hedonistic lifestyle or a dunya-centered lifestyle, some of the beliefs are ugly if you say them out loud. So people don't say them out loud. Like the idea of I don't believe in anything out there. And I believe that, the purpose of life is happiness or personal fulfillment and so on. So in conclusion, or by extension of that, you shouldn't be giving charity. What value does it serve you? Right?
It's never going to do anything good.
Yeah, it will do good in the world, but we can't agree on good. How do you define this good?
That's what I'm saying. It's not going to do anything good.
Yeah, we're going to come and
go in need a common playing ground to at least start this conversation.
Which is why we technically, when you were referring to and when you were asking the question, what is it that we what is it that we practically? You asked the question before that it was like, what do we have that allows the ant to perceive the masterpiece, right? To perceive that,
Or to at least get the strength to keep going until it reaches the
Yeah, that's exactly my point. Because like in our everyday lives, like it's great to have this conversation, and even for the viewers to have it, as something that sits in the back of their head.
Yeah.
But we eventually forget these things. We need a reminder.
Yeah.
And so
That's why
if it's not podcasts or the Tribe podcast or
Yes, sir.
whatever, what is the constant reminder that you have to tell you to keep going?
It's something better than the Tribe podcast. It's the Qur'an, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why it's very important for a person, an individual, to develop a personal relationship, especially Muslims, develop a personal relationship to the Qur'an. There are people who, as soon as they find the Qur'an, they tell you, and you hear these stories many, many times. As soon as I opened the Qur'an and I read the words, even not the Arabic, right? These people don't speak Arabic. And the Arabic of the Qur'an is like a different level. But when they just read the English, they're like, wow, this makes sense. And like it really hits home for them.
Absolutely.
Right?
on such a I don't want to say primal, but on such an intrinsic level. Like,
yeah. A profound,
core level.
profound.
Profound makes it's
Profound level.
It's very deep.
It hits right home because this makes sense. This is what the instruction the instruction manual came with, right? You came into this world, and this is what it came with, and that's why having that relationship to the Quran and just a practical display of that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything when you were asking for what is it that we practically do in this dunya, right? What are some things that I can do practically? I found a verse in the Quran that sums up everything we talk about. I trying to remember it, I was trying to look for it, and then I found it. It's Surah Luqman. Right, Luqman is a righteous man, or some, there's obviously a difference of opinion about whether he's a prophet or righteous man. I'm not gonna get into that, but he's advising his son throughout the whole chapter. Is that this righteous man is advising his son, and so he says, "Ya bunayya, aqim as-salah." Oh my son, declare salah, or declare establish prayer. So establishing prayer, what is it the first thing we talked about? Establishing a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First thing you do, establish a connection to Allah. Wa'mur bil ma'ruf, and enjoin what is good, right? These are practical steps. You're aqim as-salah, you're practicing connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We Muslims, we have 5 prayers a day. Khalas, I mastered the 5 prayers. You do the sunnahs, you do the nawafil, you do the qiyam. It's different. There's different
keep your connection with you. So to answer his question of so we know for a fact that the ant can't always keep in mind that hey, power along, there's a beautiful design here, because you need patience. Like I've been told there's a beautiful design that I'm walking through, but it's the hills and valleys are really annoying me, or they're tough today, they're extra tough today. I need a break, I need a breather. I don't have it always ready. Istihdar al-ma'na, which is what's referred to in Arabic as always constantly being aware and mentally like, yeah, okay, this is part of a journey. There's a beauty here. I can't see it, but I believe in it fully. There's some days where your emotions and your iman is just highest. I fully believe in this. Like with every fiber of my being. Have you guys felt that before?
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, it makes so much sense to me. Then there's some days where your iman is at its lowest, and you're like, I believe in it, but like I just need, I'm just hanging on by a thread, right? So you're saying like, how do we, as the ants, what tools can we use? Because we can't see the full design. Allah has promised us we'll see in the akhirah. Everything's going to make sense. All the hills and valleys, all the wars, all the problems you went through, all the problems humanity went through, everything will make sense, and you're going to rest assured. That's one of the rewards too. It's like, oh my God, I get it now. And that's so relieving to know that these questions will be answered. Allah's not going to leave those loose ends. But in the meantime, I need some fuel to just get to the next part of this carpet.
I feel like that's what this verse is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
giving you the tools.
Your wording is like when I finish and tell you, you're gonna see how your wording is so comprehensive with this. Wa'mur bil ma'ruf, enjoy what is good. Wanha anil munkar, forbid evil. So anything that you see good, you see like the daily events that you see, people fighting in the train, people fighting online, people fighting in different, on a different continent. There is something that you are able to do something about it in terms of speaking
about
injustice. Yeah, for example, what's happening in India, right? What's happening in Kashmir. You have a platform. Every person nowadays and age has a platform to speak on in terms of social media. Every person, whether you're a person in the community, has children, right? You can educate your children about these problems. Your friends, you sit down and have a discussion about it with your friends. Educate yourself on these issues. Hate these issues in your hearts. Hate the wars. Hate like the injustices that happen. So that's amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar. You're joining good, forbidding evil. And then he ends it with this, and it's crazy because you just mentioned it. Wasbir ala ma asabak, and be patient with that. With
what befalls you.
With what befalls you. Any evil, bad that befalls you, you have to be patient with it. You're talking about how can I make the ant be patient? Right here. Right here, that's what the Qur'an does. It's such an interactive. It lists out for you. Believe in God.
Practical steps.
Practical steps. You believe in God. How do I believe in God? Pray.
Connect with
Him. Okay, and then what about my daily life? What about, does that mean I pray? That's all I do. I sit down and pray? No, you enjoy good. You forbid evil. And you're gonna do that at work. You're gonna do that at home.
These are ingredients to keep your iman, keep that fire burning, like adding wood to that torch.
What about when my iman is low? What about when I can't enjoy good, forbid evil? What about when khalas, I'm so tired, right? Everything seems so tight around. Be patient. And then he ends it off with إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Verily, these are some of the most important commandments. So the Quran literally just one verse. It's like the entire podcast. Summarize it. What is the meaning of life? Right? You got it, bro.
If you want, the meaning of life, like in practical terms, in terms of step 1, step 2, step 3, like here's your 5 ingredients. Aqim salah, establish prayer. Encourage good, forbid evil, and be patient with.
You're practicing that reason that you're establishing the prayer in the first place. You're always practicing the good, evil. So it's like in the back of your mind, you're always remembering what. Oh, Allah said that don't hit, don't steal, don't.
The tools.
Drunk,
these are all tools.
Yeah,
these are all tools to get to the other side of the carpet. So in بقلب سليم, right? يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. On that day, no wealth and no children will avail you, no big family will avail you, except for those who arrive to Allah with a pure heart, with a purified heart, right? A clean heart. So how do you get there? How do you get to the end of that carpet and finally reach salvation and see the design and be reassured, wow, it was all worth it. It was all for a reason, right? Is Allah saying you're going to need some tools along the way. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. Allah says take some provisions, and the best provision you could take on your journey is taqwa, is consciousness of God, awareness of Allah. So goal, the meaning of life. What is our goal? To earn God's love, pleasure, and eternal salvation.
Right.
That's our goal.
I can't help but to think, given how far we've come in this discussion, that we might even need to go as far as perhaps reorganizing or rephrasing the question within itself. What is the meaning of life? Because it seems to me like when we go through actually implementing and applying the things that we just talked about, including enjoying good, forbidding evil. Doing salah and then reading the Qur'an and whatnot, right? This, at least in my experience, when I've done it, what it does is it brings me more of a feeling of satisfaction and gratitude towards my creator and the existence and where I've come from, where I'm going, rather than understanding like, oh, what is my actual plan from the day that I'm born to the day that I die? You know that you're going to be here no matter what, and what's written is written, and it will play out in the way that Allah has written it for you. But these tools will offer you a sense of gratification and a reminder for you to be patient in times of struggle. So guys, let's try to sum it up. What is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? If we were to put it into simple terms, I would say the goal is to serve God. The reward in exchange for that is eternal salvation and eternal bliss. And then finally, the way to do that, because you were talking about practical. Okay, I want to serve God. So does everybody. Now, how to do it practically, and that's where your advice directly from the Quran. Here's some tools, here's some tips, here's your action items. Number 1, establish prayer. And salah, the word comes from connection, sila, right? Connection with God. If you don't have a connection with God, you're not going to be fulfilled, you're not going to have purpose, you're not going to be able. It's refueling your fire, right? Refueling your gas tank, in the analogy of like someone wanting to drive a long distance. And like putting our head back into the ant. I'm the ant, and I have hills and valleys, and things change color in front of me, and I don't understand why. Not always. Maybe I have an idea, or someone alerted me or told me, hey, don't worry, there's a design here, it's beautiful. You're going to find out one day. And I believe it most of the time. Sometimes my belief in it is at the weakest level. And that's where the Prophet Muhammad says, إِنَّ الْإِيمَانَ لَا يَخْلَقُ فِي قَلْبِ أَحَدِكُمْ كَمَا يَخْلَقُ الثَّوْبِ فَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ أَنْ يُجَدِّدَ الْإِيمَانَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, Iman wears out the same way that a garment does. So he said, ask Allah to renew the Iman in your hearts. So that's what we should be doing, right? It's like, I believe in this. Some days it's not the strongest. I ask Allah to renew it, but I'm going to take the necessary tools. So when Allah's saying enjoin good or encourage others to do good, you may perceive it as I'm helping the world, but partially you're also helping yourself. By enjoining good and making the world a better place, it also returns back.
A better environment for yourself.
Yeah, but also
we need a whole episode on enjoining good, forbidding evil. By the way, that would be like a night. But
absolutely. I think we should do it by force.
I'm just foreshadowing.
Yes, absolutely. Iron fist or nothing.
I think back in the example of the ant, what's really important is that the ant recognizes, given the challenges that it's going to have in the journey to ultimately get to its goal, it's obviously going to have the times when it gets tired and needs a break. And so how do you get yourself out of that? My personal advice, number one, is to recognize that you are in a temporary break, right? Recognize the fact that Iman in for everybody's lives, it's an up and down. It's a constant up and down. I believe there's also a direct hadith in which the Prophet mentioned something along the lines of that.
He did, yes.
Right? So when you're having a moment of good, you recognize that it's a moment of good, but at the same time, you don't get so excited that you expect it to be there for the rest of your life so that you don't break your heart. But at the same time, when you go back down to the moments of bad, or when you're not perhaps having not the best moment of your life, or in the case of the end where you need a break, you recognize, okay, this is a time in which I'm not in my best condition. It's temporary. I'm going to take the rest or the steps that I need to do to make the best that I can at this time, and then slowly step back up and get back to it. And the ant, or humans in general, we will always do this because we ultimately have a goal that we're looking to reach, which, like you said, is just simply having your eyes on the prize. When you have your eyes on the prize, and ultimately that's what you desire and you'll always want, you'll get back up to it, whether you fall 1,000 times, whether you don't fall at all.
So on that note, it's actually the idea of a believer or someone who has a goal to achieve at the end of this carpet, the ant, right? Which is easier, the person who's going through these hills and valleys and the changes of colors and change of environments and has no idea, and in fact believes that there's no purpose to any of this, who's going to have an easier, or I guess more purposeful life, versus the person who has their eyes on the prize. They go like, this is all happening for a reason. One day it's all going to be explained to me, it's all going to make sense. And the change of colors, there's a reason for this, there's a design happening here. I don't necessarily know all of it, but I've been reassured that there's a meaning here, and I'm going to keep trudging along. I still have a goal to achieve, and I'm going to keep doing what I need to do.
Obviously the one with the goal. I mean, obviously that individual is only going through the struggle to begin with because they want to reach that goal.
Yeah.
If they didn't see a point or a use to it or a reason to even do it, why would they even go through it?
Yeah.
One other thing I just thought of is like that's one type of motivation that might motivate you, Muhammad, for example. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, or not for me, some people, many people, have mastered the ability to enjoy the sweetness of the journey itself. So knowing that, for example, some people, when they do pray, they feel the sweetness of that prayer and that salah, and so they enjoy it because they know that in them doing that, there's obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's them pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing that. There's they enjoy enjoining good and forbidding evil. They enjoy stopping someone from an injustice from happening to someone. So also and some people, they start to enjoy literally the patience of like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested me. I would rather obviously not be tested. But when Allah does test me, they respond in a very, very beautiful manner. Once people start to do that, when you start to enjoy the journey, right? Like I think many of the greatest athletes, I always hear this quote, like Kobe. It's like it's not just about reaching the destination; it's also enjoying the journey, right? So that's a part of it. When you're always using those like small tools that we gave, right? You have the correct perspective now. You understand this world is 50%, next world is 50%, and I'm just using the tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me every day to remember Him. All of a sudden, all of the things that start to happen, you start to enjoy them. Not that the pain happens, you start to enjoy it.
No, I get you. Like, there's a concept amongst ulama, which was you're referring to, is when calamity strikes, when difficulty strikes you that you cannot change, they say as-sabru wajib wal-rida mustahab. Patience is an obligation. You're obligated to be patient with this test. Rida, being pleased with it or being content with it, is mustahab.
And that's
hard. If you can achieve that level, great. The reward is going to be insane. But Allah doesn't obligate you. You're not sinning if you're not content with the difficulty. Right. But you're sinning if you're not patient with the difficulty. So as-sabru wajib wa rida mustahab, I think beautifully summarizes.
Yeah, the man that loves to walk will walk further than the man that has a desire for the goal.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's good. Okay.
I wanted to mention just a little tidbit.
Got that from online.
I was gonna say, you like Joe Rogan or something?
Joe Rogan, he's a poet.
Joe,
come on.
Muhammad Rogan.
This is a completely random tidbit, but it's interesting. It's related to what you said earlier, which is the ant. Like if the ant has no actual purpose, like why not just lie down? Why go through all the hills and the valleys, right? And you might think, like going back to what we said a while back about holding somebody who's hedonistic, who doesn't believe anything's out there, there's no design. If you hold him to his test, be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing anything at all. There's no purpose of life, so just lie down and go to sleep until you die.
Rather, I guess that's in a real world scenario. That's what could perhaps lead to suicide, maybe.
It can. No, that's the thing. May Allah Ta'ala protect us and allow us to be a force of removing those thoughts from people's head. Like, because if you create purpose, and you let somebody know there's a fire burning under them, and you get up and start working and whatnot, they, inshallah, it helps them, it motivates them, it gets them out of bed, it gets them finding reason. And actually, this is tied to what I was looking up here because I remember reading about it. So there's a movement that started in China last year. It's called the lying flat movement. Lying flat, lie down, basically. So the idea was getting rid or escaping. I didn't find like a description of it here, but here.
They don't have a mission statement.
The idea of lying flat, it's not like an official move because the government like banned references to it and like stopped people
They were
sharing
too
that.
lazy they were lying flat, so they didn't write a mission statement.
Well, that's fun. I mean, that would make sense. But it's called, I think, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Tang Ping. Forgive me.
Yeah, but it got canceled so bad.
Cancelled.
Yo.
Get out of here. All right. So here it says it's a lifestyle. Tang Ping is the lying flat movement. It's a lifestyle and social protest movement in China that began in April 2021. It is a rejection of societal pressure to work. Those who participate in Tang Ping instead choose to lie down flat and get over the beatings via a low desire, more indifferent attitude towards life. So they're
So
like,
how do they eat and drink and survive?
so the phrase became very popular and it was shared on social media. The government banned it and all the usual stuff that they usually do. And it listed the word as one of the 10 most popular memes of 2021 on Chinese internet. So they really were trying to ban it. And then they evolved the youth in there, evolved the movement to be Bei Lan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means let it rot. Which means to actively embrace a deteriorating situation rather than try to turn it around. So basically, when you have like an atheistic society, and
I'm sorry, I would cut you off, bro.
Do it.
Someone watched The Lion King and saw Hakuna Matata and was like, "Yo, listen,
Hakuna Matata is the way. It means no worries.
it means."
It means no worries.
We should, you know what? This episode was pointless. Like, just
It was
Hakuna
full.
Matata, though.
It was full point. Oh, I
Yeah,
say it
it
was
was-
point full. Frankly speaking, are you speaking ill of the Lion King?
You're right. I'm sorry.
Speak no. You could speak ill of the remake because it's basically it's human nature to dislike remakes.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
dislike the remake. I never seen it.
You're definitely getting canceled for
Yeah,
100%.
Wait, once I never spoke ill of the Lion King. I was like,
I know.
I said that
just trying to-
someone is ripping off Simba right now. Or
Let it rot.
this was Hakuna Matata, bro. This is
They should have said let it rot.
yeah.
Take
Just,
ping.
say Hakuna Matata.
Bay Land. They
You
should
went-
have. That should be the new Hakuna Matata.
It's
Let it
just-
rot.
Guys, let's get back to meaning of life.
Yeah,
What's the frozen one? Let it snow? No.
Let it snow?
No.
Let it go.
Let it go. Let it rot. Should be the new Frozen 3.
they watched Lion King and Frozen and basically came
Mix them up. Let it rot. I love it. It's so powerful. Let it rot. Like,
Oh,
screw it all.
Oh my god.
Which means to actively embrace a deteriorating situation. Like the idea of in atheistic society, you're being forced to believe that nothing means anything. There's no point in surviving. And you're being told, but you still should be overworked 9 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day. And you're like, wait, nothing means anything. Why the heck should I do it? Khalas, I'll lie down and let it rot. I'm the ant and I'm told that none of this means anything. None of these hills and valleys or these colors mean anything. Khalas, I'll go lie down and
That's what
What are you gonna do?
That's what the ideology leads to.
yeah, they're ahead of the game. The let it rot movement. I'd like to connect with
this
them,
is-
frankly.
I think actually
all this makes me just want to say Alhamdulillah for Islam.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
actually, I wanted to make a point about this. Perhaps one of the best things that we have about Islam is that we have a goal or a purpose that we're never going to achieve in this life. Therefore, so long as you're living, at the very, very least, if you're not somebody that's interested in your career or your family or making connections or enjoying good and forbidding evil and whatnot, at the very, very least, borderline, what you can do is always look forward to Jannah and work for that. And the thing is, you'll never live a day in which you quote unquote feel purposeless
Yeah.
or hedonistic, because this is something that you won't reach in your life. You'll work for it, and you'll only really kind of begin to get towards it when you die. So
Like that, and there's no rush to die. It's like when death comes to you, you've
Exactly.
you've succeeded.
but you'll always have something to
That
do, and,
controls what can
and
be.
you'll always have a purpose that your work is going to go towards. So it is worth it for you in the end.
Yeah, you're putting away, like, what does it call it? Chipping or saving money for a rainy day, right? Every salah, every zakat, every tasbih, every istighfar, every dhikr, every smile. There's one way to look at it. Obviously, it's not the only way, but it's like, hey, look, man, if I found no purpose at all today, I remember there was one brother saying, like, some days I feel like useless. I told him, hey, if you get up and pray, you prayed your 5 prayers.
Still
Like,
a Muslim.
your top 1.1% of people, even amongst the Muslims, how many of them did their 5 prayers? I told him, you want to make sure that day did not go to waste whatsoever. Make istighfar 70 times that day so you fulfill the sunnah. What percentage of people, of Muslims, made istighfar 70 times that day? Your top 0.01% of that day. Tell me I feel useless. You just succeeded in a way that you didn't do any other day. and 99.999% of people did not do that day.
And that's what really matters, because any work for the dunya is eventually gonna go to waste anyways.
Unless it was in a funnel towards eternal bliss.
This is us just tapping into one aspect of our creed and answering one question using the creed that we have and what comes in the Qur'an and Sunnah.
Yeah.
And even we as Muslims, sometimes, subhanAllah, we have we have all this content, right? And we even forget it sometimes, because that's the nature of insan. That's why you're called insan, because you forget. Nasay, right? It comes from nasiya. Nasiyan. So imagine someone who has none of this. Imagine someone who's never had access to this. And honestly, sometimes I think about it. You feel sympathy. You feel really bad for this person.
And that's how the Prophet felt.
Yeah.
Allah says in the Quran, you're almost gonna
perhaps you're gonna throw yourself
or die out of grief, be overwhelmed with grief
over them.
Yeah, over their plight. And that's how we should feel. We should feel really sad and really hopeful. Like when you hear the story about these Chinese youth, you're like, man, Islam would give them purpose. It would give them, like, they wouldn't be letting it rot. Like, they wouldn't feel like, what's the point? Let it all die, you know? They'd be saying the opposite.
What else can come and systematically tell you, hey, this is the reason for your motivation. This is the reason as to why you do this. This is the reason as to... Just
find value in everything. Even stepping into the bathroom with your left foot.
Exactly.
You found value in that, as something as simple as that would otherwise be meaningless.
Or for, like, people who do find the motivation, people who do reach that motivation, like, right, those guys that, we mentioned them before, wake up 4 a.m., hit the gym, finish by 6, make 5K by 9, absolutely. And then by 11 they're millionaire,
make another million.
Start a company by 10.
I'm working on a channel like that, by the way.
But those guys that are completely motivated, I'm sorry, but the Muslim who prays Fajr, who wakes up for Fajr and lifts that blanket off of them, they might have not have gotten up and made a company and all of that, but they found
company by noon, or
they found the motivation every single day. You found motivation to make content. You found motivation to make content for some time. This Muslim, every single day, from the moment he was 7 years old till he dies, he has a reason to wake up 4 or 5 a.m. in order to, put water on himself in the winter in the cold.
Challenging every fiber. And imagine that 6 a.m. you have your face on the ground, worshiping your Lord, starting that day well. And imagine the reward, man, the hasanat, the humility, the mountains.
For something beyond us.
Yeah, the humility, the motivation, the work ethic. You intrinsically are building a person without realizing. You're building an entire personality. Discipline without even...
Discipline is power.
Something after a while you do routinely. But you actually are building these things in yourself that no one, literally, like 50% of the world doesn't do.
More.
I didn't want to go very badly with the statistics.
I hear you. But yeah. It's not something to be arrogant about, for sure. But it's something Allah has given us a inbuilt framework to become a powerful, purposeful human being.
We're just to be clear, we're blushing at the perfection of the system, not the perfection of the person who's in
participants.
The participants, right? So that's what I'm
No, I hear you saying it's it's right there. You don't need an Instagram page and the guy yelling at you and cursing at you to wake up at 4 a.m. Allah, convinced you to do it with the reward. I mean, just the sunnah of Fajr, being worth the world and everything in it. You're like, wow, man, I got richer. It's better than building a company before 12 p.m., frankly speaking. Anyhow, let's
this is a good discussion.
Wrap it up. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching what was perhaps our best episode so far, and we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Absolutely.
You go ahead.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك